Chapter 8. Godly Knights and Heavenly Knights. Sena and Kagaya engaged each other in simulated combat. Whoa. Is this really Xianvi? Kagaya was overwhelmed by the sight of Xianvi. The mechs of her country were often dressed in flashy ceremonial decorations. They were, in a sense, also works of art. But Xianvi was rugged and daunting. Its gray exterior gave it the appearance of a megalithic statue with a tremendous presence. So, this is it, the top-level royal tree. It's amazing. Sauren was impressed too. Shoo, ahahaha. And while Sajia was overwhelmed by its presence, she tried to remain calm and laugh it off. Xianvi, please begin. Xianvi moaned and Sena was transferred aboard. That voice. Oh! Sauren's people were puzzled by the fact that the impression Xianvi gave off changed so quickly. After transferring Sena, Xianvi now gave off a gentle and friendly atmosphere. I see. Sena must be good with children. Sauren had imagined it was a brutal god of war. But now it seemed like an innocent child. The impression it's giving off has changed considerably. Kagaya felt the same thing from Xianvi she felt from her own knight, but much stronger. She felt Xianvi's presence was lovable in a sense, and it made her feel a sense of disgust for how Renza's countries treated the trees and pitted them against each other. There was a gap between the pure childlike innocence she felt in Xianvi's personality and the war machine they wanted to use it as. Sauren and Saju, along with Hakurin, headed for a meeting with the main fleet and the 5 house auditors. Kagaya transferred to the cockpit of her mech. Behind the transfer gate there was a beautifully decorated gate and steps. Kagaya was dressed in a formal outfit that looked like a shrine maiden. She sat down in what appeared to be a throne in a temple, but was actually her cockpit. Link. A tremendous number of monitors were launched. They scanned Kagaya's personal data and disappeared. Kagaya-sama. Thank you very much for renting from us today. You sure are really enthusiastic about business. Kagaya wryly smiled at the staff of Recepshi who was on the monitor. You're good to go. Don't worry about it getting damaged. We have a rescue crew on standby. Recepshi had leased them a satellite planetoid for battling on. It was half the size of the moon and had for some reason been impacted here, and they're giving it a fairly distorted shape. Give us a good show. It's just practice. Don't expect an all-out fight. Well, I'm off. I don't want to keep Sena waiting. Move out. When Kagaya moved Moonlit Knight to a cargo ship for transportation, Xianvi had already been loaded there. They took the ship to avoid causing a stir with the ships outside. Wow, Kagaya, Moonlit Knight is beautiful. Sena said. She blushed. Thank you. Kagaya's armored cavalry, Moonlit Knight, was a beautiful female-type knight. It was covered in red cord with gold decorations on it like Japanese warrior armor. The height was about the same as Xianvi, but it seemed far more delicate. The additional armor seemed like a pure white kimono that looked like a traditional bridal costume. Sena watched her mech board the ship. The first time I saw a heavenly knight, I thought it was gaudy, but seeing them on the flower passage makes it look pretty nice. Soon the cargo ship arrived at the satellite. The stage satellite confronted Xianvi and Moonlit Knight. It is truly a training match. It will be more powerful when it comes to production. Kagaya rushed into battle mode at a stroke to the tremendous pressure Xianvi encompassed, which was confirmed by confronting it. Although I said that there is no attack from Xianvi, I still want to experience a little. Can you do it as a fight without weapons? I understand. An immediate response came from Sena. Even in live simulated battle, Sena would acknowledge it if he could not even knock on Kagaya. Please get started. Roger that. Sena responded and Xianvi rushed at the Moonlit Knight at the moment. Fast. Kagaya just barely avoided a straight left hand from Xianvi that came right in front of her without any preliminary movement. The simulated battle with Sena yesterday was played out between armored cavalry, but the opponent's intimidation and everything about him was off the charts. Here it is. Kagaya quickly corrected the course of her senses, wondering how things could be so different. In any case, just the added speed and power of Xianvi had raised Sena's fighting ability tremendously. Add to that the combat data that Xianvi must have accumulated, and at that point, Kagaya had no time to spare, and the magical thought acceleration she possessed was automatically activated. You licked me a little, but... Nevertheless, the difference in pilot experience was still significant. As Kagaya gradually became accustomed to ZNV's speed and power, she terminated the thought acceleration. So, what do you think? You're still using Jurai's fighting techniques. Doesn't it just make sense to? Long ago, along with Tenchi, he learned some of the basics as a self-defense technique from Katsuhito, which was tremendously helpful in avoiding crisis, and he had relied on it since joining the GP. He mostly knew how to avoid and escape, and that was all that was needed with pirates. No, it's not the best strategy. If you use better techniques, you can overwhelm your opponent at a much earlier stage. Do you think it will make me lose? It shouldn't be a problem unless it ends up a rough battle. Things are going to be one-on-one after all. However, your self-defense abilities are expert level. So, you won't end up in trouble on that end. I see, you're right. I don't have any real offensive training. I feel a bit like you've pulled the rug out from under me. It's okay, I'll teach you as we train. In the weeknight class, the performance of the pilot depends on their physical ability. In other words, fitness is important. Being beaten by it is like being beaten by the pilot's body itself. So, should I practice using a weeknight? If you have time to spare, that would be best. But for now, you better focus on how well you use ZNV. We need to work on your movement and attack patterns. Fighting skill isn't acquired overnight. It takes long, repetitive training and simulated fighting. Was I at least okay? You're not the best, but you're pretty good for only one day of training. If the experimental fleet goes well, we might be able to get some 4th-generation Heavenly Knights assigned to us, so you won't have to fight as much. They didn't want to impose a heavy burden on Sena to solve their problems. But for now, they had to rely on ZNV's performance. Now will you do me a favor and deploy your Light Hawk wings? Roger that. To be honest, he wanted to learn to attack first, but this training was for Kagaya, not him. He set his sights on releasing the power of ZNV. After the simulated battle, Sena and Kagaya returned home. Well, it certainly seems to me that there's a small gap in Light Hawk wings, but still, it's pretty hard to exploit it. In the battle with Tarrant, I was overwhelmed with high-energy fire from all directions. I might have to consult with the tactical staff. ZNV truly is a godly knight. It has such an intimidating presence. Yeah, but unfortunately my attack style is still unrefined. No, it's not just that. ZNV is weak. Eh? But ZNV is a 1st-generation mech. Sena was quite puzzled. No, it's not a problem with the power of the tree. It's about the performance of the mech when it fights. What do you mean? In fact, the original 5 only had the performance of the current weeknight class. Over time we added refinements to the cavalry, and as a result, the current armored cavalry was born. But in the era of the great prehistoric civilization, ZNV-sama was clearly meant for wide-area battle. So, it's weak in close combat? It has its issues. It's like using a bow and arrow in a boxing match. It's just a different kind of weapon. A skilled pilot could compensate, but you personally are going to have major problems. But can't the Light Hawk wings take on pinpointed attacks if I use it as a shield? Of course, but don't forget about the Maiden Knight. Oh right, it could cancel them. Light Hawk wings can be cancelled out by other Light Hawk wings, and the 1st gen can only generate 3 of them. ZNV is going to have to undergo some major reconstruction. I can't help but notice, though, that you might know someone to talk to about that. If Washu Hakubi made him the Kamedake, there was no doubt that she could make a top-of-the-line knight. He could also ask Eri, but he got a bad feeling and shuddered at what might happen if he did. That's not a bad idea, Philosopher's Stone. Will you tell Washu about the situation? It was possible to email Washu via the Philosopher's Stone. Restrictions were set so that direct communication was impossible, though, because that would cause various problems. I have done so. As usual, it was a brief response. My last NB was kind of too chatty, but this one is a bit too quiet. Maybe you can have her fix that too. Well, for now, it's okay as it is. Philosopher's Stone, please let me know as soon as there's a reply from Washu-sama. Roger that. Although Washu was a busybody, she had a capricious personality. It was unknown when her reply would come. Well, the urgency now is a countermeasure against the Maiden Knights, so there is no choice but to work with what we have now. Kagaya, do you think if something happened like before then, would you be able to pilot ZNV for me? I don't want to be Zin's master if that's what you are asking. You could co-pilot. The seat's big enough for 2 people. She smiled a complex smile. It would be an honor to fight as ZNV. Is it possible to get a second seat put in? I've heard of doing that for reconnaissance or special aircraft, but it's not usually done for battles. Oh, maybe we can link together. What do you mean? Kagaya smiled. On my planet, the mechs in our programs often fuse together to form a bigger mech. Well, if you have no objections, I may consider the double seat form. Yeah? Would you like to combine the cockpit cores with me and Moonlit Knight? Sena couldn't tell if she was serious or joking. It will take some time for remodeling, but it should be easier than building a new cavalry body. That was the moment when Sena and Kagaya decided that they would like to get to know each other a bit more. But if you like, I can see if we can figure out a way to link together. A cat fairy overheard all of this and miscommunicated it to Hakuran's group, who came running in a panic. Kariko, who had gone out to the dock of the Kamadake, came back to her new office feeling a little dazed. Well, where were you? You sure seem busy. Amain, who was forced to prepare the office, was a bit mad at being assigned to that task, but Marcy's men were actually doing most of the work. It was being called an office, but it was actually an entire floor of a luxury hotel in the center of a prime location. The interior was solid wood, similar to Jurai, so Kariko rather enjoyed it. I heard that a big package has arrived for us, but from where? Irma said, while keeping her eyes on the monitor as she adjusted various equipment. Maybe it's a gift from someone on board. No, it's from Jurai. It's Mizuki's exterior parts. Why would they send us that now of all times? Mizuki-chan only has her basic unit. Maybe they want to dress it up for the future. Well, you are going to have to represent Jurai from now on. Kariko wanted to stop this conversation. She looked into Irma's monitor. You don't need to be working on that. Leave it to Marcy's subordinates. I'm just making a schedule for the party today. I guess I should go get dressed.